everybody, welcome to episode 68 of an ongoing series where we basically take the camera anywhere we want and we try to find secrets and new discoveries to some of our favorite games. A couple weeks ago, I actually replaced this episode with Sonic Mania, and while a lot of you appreciated that, there was an equal number of people that were wondering where this episode was. And well, it's time to finally deliver on the promise of this episode. So big thank you to MC94 for making this week's animated intro, and with that said, let's get going. So the first area that we want to look at is the first area of the game, Seaside Hill. And one of the biggest teases in Sonic Heroes is the fact that a lot of the times when you start a stage, your character runs down a certain area that later becomes inaccessible. So we're just going to take the camera over to see if there's anything behind the hill. And apparently, it's not even called out in the back. It's simply not rendered at all. I was able to fact check this by taking the characters there themselves. And since the environment didn't appear when it was in Sonic's view, then it means it's not even hidden by culling. And also, that bridge that falls down so that you can't get back to this area is still in the water. But by far the oddest thing is that the texture used on the bottom half of the Skybox has a whole bunch of black circles. Now, at first I thought this was really unusual, but if you take the camera far enough up into the sky, the entire environment disappears except for a circle, which is incredibly similar to what this texture looks like. So it's my belief that the developers actually just took a picture of the environment from this height and then copied and pasted it into the Skybox that you see now. Next up is a zoom out of this vehicle segment with a normal perspective in the corner. One of the great things about this particular zoom out is that it's largely unaffected by the culling that is ever present in this game. And although I say that, you can actually still see some of it in large portions of the map. And before we end Act 1, I wanted to do a zoom out of the whale that is at the very end of the stage. I actually ended up showing a picture of this early on Twitter, and a lot of people didn't even know that what you're standing on at the very end of this stage is in fact the whale that you see off in the distance. But whether or not you had a keen eye in the first place, it's still really nice to see this entire area in one shot.
This place would make a great vacation spot.
While staying on the subject of aquatic creatures, I figured we could take a look at these sea turtles from Ocean Palace. One of the most unique aspects of this future act of the first zone is that you have to start platforming off of these sea turtles. But not only do the sea turtles have a lot of detail that you're not really given a great chance to look at, but doing a zoom out of this area is pretty special as well. Next up is another look at Dr. Robotnik, or Dr. Eggman if you prefer the retcon. And every single time I cover a Sonic the Hedgehog game, I just want to see if there's anything underneath those glasses, but like every time, it's a huge disappointment, and of course there's nothing there. But this time around, Dr. Eggman's got something a little bit more going on inside of his head. Apparently the goggles that rest on top of his egg-shaped dome drive deep into his skull into a cone shape. This technique was also used on the Animal Crossing episode that I covered, as well as the Mario Kart 8 episode with the Koopa Rocks. Next up is a full zoom out of Grand Metropolis. This was a very popular viewer request, mostly because anytime that there's a Metropolis in any video game, people want to know just how much of that city there actually is. And in a game like Sonic Heroes, we can restructure the question to be how much is being done to hide how small the Metropolis actually is. And in Sonic Heroes' case, the second that you go outside of any of the buildings that you can initially see, not only is there no back end to these buildings, but there is no buildings behind them either. And also one other little thing we wanted to look at before we move on is the cars. A lot of cars are flying around in the background, but you don't really get a good look at them. But by pausing the game and zooming up to them, we can see that they actually have a low level of detail. Now let's take an outside perspective on one of the many half pipes used in Sonic Heroes.
Whoa!
Now Now jumping inside the cannon is a whole other story. See, when the characters jump inside, you're not allowed to see what's going on inside the cannon. Instead, you just wait till the character's blown out of it. But if we take the camera through and see what's going on, we can see that all three characters are stacked inside of each other and constantly spinning, which is really fun to see because even in games where you are shot specifically out of a cannon, a lot of the times the character just goes invisible while they're inside. But in Sonic Heroes, rest assured, the characters are perpetually spinning, waiting for you to end their dizziness and press a button. So now we're going to take a look at Casino Zone, or Casino Park for those who are actually paying attention, and we're going to start off by doing a zoom out of one of the pinball areas, which is pretty neat in itself, but we're not going to end there. No, in fact, one of the things that we're going to look at is the skybox of this area, specifically the center point of the skybox. Now, in most skyboxes, an identical image typically meets all into one area, and it usually doesn't look that great. But here in Casino Park, the developers decided to do something a little bit sneaky, a little bit clever. And for the center of Casino Park, they actually made a roulette wheel. And why a roulette wheel is particularly clever is because if you take 1/4 of a roulette wheel and piece it together 3 more times, it looks pretty convincing. And so to match the casino motif, while at the same time also appealing to the limitations of what a skybox usually amounts to, we get a pretty fun centerpiece to it. So here on Egg Fleet, there are a ton of ships out in the air. However, this is a PlayStation 2 era type game, so to have so many objects going on at once is probably a good indication that there is some resource saving techniques used in this level. And regular viewers of the show probably know what's going on here. We got ourselves a 2D texture to represent some of the furthest away ships in this level. With the aid of standard definition and lots of fog, it's a little more difficult to catch the fact that these ships have no 3D models whatsoever, and the ones that do have really simple geometry. Another pretty big viewer request is seeing where the frogs go after they do their little rain dance. And unfortunately, the results of that aren't quite as exciting as you would hope. But in the process of checking it out, you can actually see the filter used to make it look like it's raining outside, which is not too shabby. But as for the frog itself, well, it only disappears. Nothing too exciting there.
What are we gonna do?
Oh, this one's really special. In this segment, Sonic is riding on a growing vine. So as you're sliding down this vine, it's growing with the character. But if we zoom the camera out, we can actually see that the vine is not connected at all. In fact, it kind of travels with the character instead of growing with the character. And then the texture on the vine is animated to make it look like it's growing. Hardly anything in game design is ever as easy as it looks. Like for example, this film roll that's in this menu here. It's not simply a looping animation, it's actually a part of this HUD that exists in a 3D space. And the texture used to make this film reel is just one object that actually just repeats position, but it's done so seamlessly that the players are not able to even notice. Now inside Mystic Mansion, we got our little skeleton buddies over here. And one of the things that's really odd about these guys is that if you approach them, they decide to hide behind whatever it was they popped out of, and you'll see that they're not there anymore. So obviously we gotta take the camera over to see what's going on exactly, and the first thing I wanna know is there anything else to these skeletons? And unfortunately, no. Pretty much everything that you get to see out of the skeletons is what you get. And as you could probably imagine, the second that they decide to hide behind whatever it was that they came out of, they just immediately disappear. People are probably gonna mention the fact that there's multiple skeletons in this one stage, so I do wanna show you at least one more example of pretty much the same result, except in a different area, just so that you guys know for sure. And now we're going to do a zoom out of the funky liquid room, and oh boy, I cannot wait to see how YouTube's compression messes up this scene. But whether or not YouTube decides that my video is now going to be a series of chunky pixels, you will see the fact that these particular rooms are actually completely encapsulated in a giant sphere, a large portion of which the player will never be able to see. And of course, at the very end of Mystic Mansion, we got ourselves a zoom out of the outdoor area right at the goal. You can see a bed of flowers that hugs the arena of the map. That would normally be a lot more difficult to see. And hey, thanks so much for watching. If you guys want to help me out, I actually just recently talked to someone from Team YouTube, and they said one of the things that actually affects the algorithm is sharing the video with people. So, you know, if you're watching this and you're a longtime subscriber and you want to help out, I guess sharing it with a friend would help me out greatly. So, you know, if you want to do that, that would be cool. And by the way, I'm going to be doing a brand new series starting next week. So we're going to take 1 week off from Boundary Break to give you this new series to see if you guys like it or not. I think you will. It's very close to what Boundary Break is, so I don't think anybody will hate it. Got to keep it a secret until it's premiered, I'm sorry to say. But hey, I hope that just makes you even more excited to see what it is. And if you're brand new to the channel, hey, thanks for watching, man. I really appreciate it. And if this video made a fan out of you, consider clicking on the playlist that's going to show up at the end card here. I've done 3D Sonic games in the past, and I figured I'd just put Sonic Adventure 2 right there at the top for you. So that's the first video you'll see if you click on the playlist right here. If you don't have annotations, I also got a link to it in the video description down below. But even if you do none of those things, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Take care.